Afternoon. You're very welcome to this afternoon's webinar from iPass. My name is Graham Bunting and I'm the Regional Director for UK and Ireland. So the purpose of this webinar this afternoon is to share with you a study that we commissioned with Forrester. I'm sure you know Forrester are one of the foremost and most influential research organisations on the planet. Joining us today is Sarah Musto from Forrester's Total Economic Impact Consulting team. Sarah and her team are particularly experts in translating technology investments to business value, and she's worked with us and the team here on one of our customers to build the framework and business case for using iPass. Before I hand over to Sarah, I thought I'd take the opportunity to quickly run through a couple of slides just to share the context of iPass solution in the Forrester research study. So Sarah, if you'd be good enough to move to the next slide for me. Thank you very much. So I think those of us that are here today, this afternoon, would all agree that we do indeed live in a mobile-first world, and we all want to be connected all of the time, whatever device we're using and wherever we are. Plenty of research out there now showing us that that is only going to grow in the requirements, and by 2020, 75% of Europe's and the US's workforce will indeed be mobile. And we all recognise that being connected is critical for our productivity and indeed in our personal lives. In fact, 90% of those polled say that anytime, anywhere access to data and applications makes employees more effective. Next slide, please, Sarah. Thank you. I think this slide's a great slide to summarise who we are as an organisation. So just to put the study into context, as we know, the black budget of connectivity expenses is a very difficult one for us to capture and track and quantify. So we commissioned Forrester to interview a long-time iPass customer to understand the return on investment of going Wi-Fi first with iPass. The benefits this particular customer has enjoyed are indeed significant, as you'll see. And this study was based on an older version of iPass. The latest version of iPass affords customers even greater benefits because we've made a number of changes, fairly significant changes that make it easier to manage, give greater control and visibility into your costs, improve the end user experience, which is critical, and make it secure. Unlimited access makes costs predictable, keeps employees connected with a one flat fee per user per month, and of course encourages use. iPass Smart Connect technology improves the end user experience by automatically connecting them to the best hotspot and making the user experience as friction-free as possible. And finally, keeping them secure, our last mile VPN connects them securely where they are most vulnerable, and of course where a corporate VPN doesn't exist. So hopefully that set the scene for you about who iPass is, and now I'd like to hand over to Sarah.
Great, thanks Graham. I'm excited to walk you all through the results of the Total Economic Impact case study for iPass. Once I've gone through the slides, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Before we go through the TEI case study results, I want to set the stage by discussing the purpose of TEI and the methodology that we use. Following the study discussion, again, I can answer any questions that you might have. So what is TEI? We have been using this methodology at Forrester for the past 15 years because our clients told us that next-level business case justifications were becoming increasingly important, especially for technology investments. Through our in-house surveys, we learned that over 90% of the IT decision makers that we poll found value in a business case, and so we set out to define what is an effective business case. Existing TCO analyses cover the categories of costs and avoided IT costs. Traditional ROI analyses add categories of business impact, like efficiencies and incremental revenue. Our TEI analysis adds a final step. We include risk adjustment for adoption rates, the risk of going over budget, or general uncertainties when implementing a technology solution that we know can lead to overly optimistic outcomes if they're not accounted for. And then also strategic flexibility. How can this investment today directly enable future investments that can yield additional benefit? We believe that for technology investments in particular, a TEI approach will provide a realistic and conservative approximation of the value that you can achieve. We follow the same approach for all of our studies. We start by gathering insight from Forrester analysts and then also from subject matter experts at iPass to lay the groundwork for a discussion with a current iPass customer. Then we talk to that customer one-on-one to understand their experience before and after the decision to use iPass. We take what we learned from the customer to build a financial model framework and to write a case study that describes that framework. And the final case study is validated by our Forrester analyst, the experts at iPass, and most importantly, it's validated by the customer that we interviewed. And here you can see again the 4 components of the total economic impact analysis: benefits, costs, flexibility, all filtered through that very important risk lens. The final product is the TEI case study, which details the dollar value of these categories and high-level financial metrics like ROI, net present value, and payback period. As a third-party independent research firm, we do have a number of disclosures in all of our materials. I won't read through all of these, but I do want to call out a few key points. This presentation is an abridged version of a full case study. If you'd like more detail on the topics that we cover during the call today, please go download the study from the iPass website. The results of the study are based on the experience of one iPass customer. We purposely limit our analysis to what we hear directly in the customer interview in order to remain as objective as possible. We encourage you to take the framework from the study, modify it for your own organization, and plug in your own numbers to get a more personalized ROI estimate. And finally, even though the study was commissioned by iPass, Forrester does not endorse iPass, and we do maintain editorial control during the creation of all of our case studies. So let's dive into the study's results. Forrester set out to study the potential return on investment that organizations may realize by investing in iPass. The purpose of the study is to provide readers with that framework to evaluate the potential financial impact of iPass and use the customer's actual experience as a proof point of this potential impact. To better understand the benefits, costs, and risks of an iPass investment, we interviewed one current iPass customer. Prior to using iPass, this organization's employees would either expense paid Wi-Fi or forego Wi-Fi connections if connectivity was too difficult. This had a big impact on productivity and availability of those employees during working hours when they were remote. And it was hard for the organization to project and manage Wi-Fi costs. In order to resolve these challenges, the organization made the decision to standardize on iPass for remote connectivity. The result was additional productive hours while employees were outside of the office, employees remaining accessible via email or chat and having access to key applications, and streamlined and optimized connectivity costs. By using iPass, this customer was able to achieve a risk-adjusted ROI of 486%, a net present value of a little over $12 million over 3 years. And a key benefit for this organization is they are able to gain an additional 118,000 hours of productivity each year through the use of iPass, which we'll detail in a few minutes. Now let's dive deeper and discuss the cost and benefit categories that contribute to those high-level financial metrics. The organization that we spoke with is a large multinational organization with almost 100,000 employees worldwide. The organization has had access to iPass for over 10 years, but recently decided to standardize on iPass for remote connectivity in order to drive high adoption and use of iPass. Our analysis focuses on these most recent years of iPass use in order to capture the most current features of iPass and also the current environment related to Wi-Fi. All employees at this organization have access to iPass on their laptops, and the organization classifies about 1,000 employees each month as power users of iPass. The biggest challenges this organization faced before using iPass were that Wi-Fi costs were difficult to control because employees would often expense Wi-Fi, sometimes as an add-on item, to a larger trip without even thinking about it. And there was a cost to the organization to process that expense as well. Sometimes connecting to Wi-Fi was too difficult for employees, or employees thought that there were security concerns or connections had poor performance. So there were many lost hours of productivity in airports and conference centers, on flights, and sometimes during those hours, key information was needed from these employees quite urgently, and there was negative business impacts from not being able to access that employee or that information. So the organization set out to resolve these challenges by investing in iPass and standardizing on iPass to ensure that their mobile workforce is able to securely connect as much as possible while they are outside of corporate offices. And because they are standardizing on iPass, they sought better control of Wi-Fi costs. The key results were that many of those lost productivity hours are able to be captured with seamless, cost-effective access to Wi-Fi, minimizing disruption to the business while employees are remote. The organization implemented a policy that it would not expense non-iPass Wi-Fi, so costs are much better controlled with iPass. And the organization is considering investing in last-mile VPN to be proactive about security concerns related to remote connectivity. We've included several quotes from the interviewed organization in the case study. Two key quotes that sum up the results of the iPass investment are that iPass provides ease of connectivity outside of their offices. Employees can connect quickly to Wi-Fi without having to enter any personal or credit card information or fill out expense reports. Also, the benefit of having employees remain connected to the company outside of the office, not only does this provide additional productive hours to the organization from these employees, but it also means that when coworkers or bosses need urgent information from remote employees during time-sensitive discussions or activities with clients, the employee, because they are connected via iPass, can easily and securely provide that information, which was not always possible before. Based on the data from the interviewee, we were able to quantify a number of benefits from using iPass. There were three key quantified benefit categories. The first category is improved employee productivity from easier access to Wi-Fi while remote. The second category is avoided connectivity costs by standardizing on iPass. And the third category is in-flight Wi-Fi cost avoidance. One of the faster growing requests from remote employees was access to Wi-Fi on flights, and iPass is able to provide that more securely and cost effectively. So let's look at each of these in more detail. We'll start with employee productivity. Before standardizing on iPass, difficulties in accessing Wi-Fi in airports or on flights would prevent employees from being able to access key applications outside of the office. These difficulties could include performance of some Wi-Fi connections, including free Wi-Fi, cost of paid Wi-Fi, and security concerns with entering credit card information or using free hotspots. Sometimes the easiest option would be to forego Wi-Fi in these instances. With iPass, these difficulties are largely resolved, allowing employees who are remote to be connected more often while outside of the office. To arrive at a value on this additional productive time, we consider that around 1,000 employees each month are power users of iPass, with, on average, almost 20 hours in that month that could be used to be productive but wasn't before. We focused on power users because they were the easiest to quantify the productivity benefits since they were remote the most often. But no, these don't always have to be the same people every month. We're saying 1,000 employees every month have an 18-hour opportunity for additional productivity. That doesn't mean it's just 1,000 of the total workforce. Every person at the organization has iPass access. To put a value on those hours, we use the average fully loaded hourly compensation as a conservative measure for those remote or traveling employees. We also include what we call a productivity capture. This is a way for us to be more conservative. We consider for any time savings benefit that some of that potential time savings is probably not being captured for additional productive work. And so we only want to capture the value of time that truly is being repurposed. For our study, the interviewee assumed that about 50% of those 20 potential productive hours are actually being captured and used by employees. In addition, we built an adoption ramp to account for the growing adoption and habitual use of iPass while remote over time. There is an additional level of benefit here that we were not able to capture, but should be considered, which is how is that additional time being used, and is it creating additional benefit for the organization? In some cases, like as I mentioned before, where time-sensitive information was needed from remote employees during client presentations or to close sales deals, the impact of having that information on time, being able to connect securely and communicate contracts or other personal information, because the employee is connected, means that additional revenue or additional clients can be onboarded. The interviewee was not able to quantify that impact, but noted that it's very important and very valuable for the organization. You'll notice that we also include a risk adjustment in the calculation, a reduction of 15%. The risk adjustment takes into account the external and internal forces that can affect the ability to realize this benefit. We'll touch more on risk adjustment in one of the later slides. The risk-adjusted total benefit over 3 years from improved productivity is almost $10 million. The second benefit is streamlined connectivity costs. Before using iPass, these power users would spend on average $80 per month on connectivity, which includes the cost of processing those expenses. The organization made the decision to no longer reimburse those expenses along with the standardization on iPass, avoiding the entirety of that cost immediately. In addition, over time, the organization found that with increased adoption of iPass, cellular modems were not needed with corporate device purchases. The organization on average purchases 25,000 devices each year with a 3-year refresh cycle, and each modem conservatively costs about $50. This is in total for the organization about $4 million of avoided Wi-Fi cost savings that were eliminated with iPass. The third quantified benefit is avoided in-flight Wi-Fi costs. The organization has had growing demand from employees for in-flight Wi-Fi access. Prior to using iPass, employees would either expense the cost of in-flight Wi-Fi or would hesitate to purchase in-flight Wi-Fi because of security concerns entering their personal information to access it. With iPass, employees can seamlessly access in-flight Wi-Fi at a lower cost, allowing employees to use this valuable in-flight time for productive purposes while avoiding the full cost of that Wi-Fi access. Over 3 years, this benefit is just over $1 million. On the cost side of the equation, there are 2 main buckets of costs associated with the investment. The largest cost is for the use of iPass. The organization currently pays monthly costs to iPass based on usage of Wi-Fi hotspots and in-flight Wi-Fi. Monthly costs are variable, and they are growing over time with increased usage, particularly of in-flight Wi-Fi. Over the 3 years, these costs total about $2.2 million. The organization is considering the iPass Unlimited offering, which would provide more stable pricing based on the number of users instead of on usage as they're paying currently. The organization also spent time on implementation and ongoing management associated with iPass. The organization uses the customer-hosted version of iPass, so internal staff spend time both on implementation and deployment of iPass as well as annual upgrades. The organization spent a total of just over 1,000 hours for the initial deployment of iPass and then used an existing VM for that. They also built an API, which took about 300 hours to help automate the verification of active iPass users as users join and leave the organization, which keeps their billing very accurate and very efficient. On an ongoing basis, the organization spends about 900 hours per year upgrading to the latest version of iPass and spent minimal time creating training documents and very little time on troubleshooting problems. iPass recently introduced the iPass hosted version of its service, so these kinds of operational hours would be quite a bit lower with that iPass hosted version. In addition to benefit and cost, TEI considers flexibility and risk. Flexibility is the opportunity enabled by a current investment to make additional investments that can yield additional benefit. The key flexibility factor for the interviewees was the introduction of last mile VPN. The organization is actively investigating using last mile VPN to encrypt traffic between the user and the internet connection point to prevent access to company confidential information, credit card information or personal information, or access to corporate devices to distribute malware, for example. While they have been lucky not to have had any major security issues so far, they recognize this is a big risk, and they want to be proactive about avoiding costly breaches, both in dollars and in public perception, as well as any system downtime that could be caused by the introduction of malware. In terms of risk, we mentioned risk factors throughout the benefit discussion. Forrester assigns for each benefit and cost category a risk adjustment. This risk adjustment is determined through what we call triangular distribution. We estimate for each category what is the most likely, worst case, and best case outcome. The risk adjustment tends to adjust benefit values down and cost values up, providing a more conservative outcome. For the implementation risks that could affect cost values, we consider variability in monthly iPass costs due to the usage-based pricing model they currently have, as well as difficulty in accurately quantifying and predicting time spent by internal staff on implementation and annual management. For impact risks that affect benefit, we consider that productivity benefits can be hard to accurately quantify and estimate, and they are based on a number of factors, including how many power users each month are using iPass, the level of adoption of iPass by these power users, and the availability of Wi-Fi enabled hotspots. Alternate connectivity costs are averaged estimates, and avoided in-flight Wi-Fi costs are dependent on actual use of in-flight Wi-Fi and the growth rate of that use over time. Again, the impact of including a risk adjustment is to recognize these risks to benefit and cost values and ensure that with normal risk mitigation, the financial output of this model is more realistic. With all that said, let's zoom back out and take a final look at the overall financial snapshot. Here are the risk-adjusted benefit and cost totals over the 3 years of our analysis, as well as the 3-year present value. Since this is a cash flow analysis, we apply a 10% discount rate to get the present value figures. The net present value, again, is slightly over $12 million. The ROI is 486% over these 3 years, and the investment pays back quite quickly. We've also charted this to provide a different view. Where you'll see over time is that increased adoption and use of iPass drives benefits up faster than costs grow. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I guess we just open up the bridge now to see if there are, in fact, any questions on the bridge. There don't appear to be any in the chat or the question session at the moment. So we'll open up the bridge now. If anybody has any questions, please do feel free to speak up. I'm just trying to unmute everybody. Start. Start 21. So we're just unmuting everybody. Unfortunately, the technology is getting the better of us, so we're unmuting everybody one by one. If anybody does have any questions, please feel free to raise the question that I Quite a lot of noise on the line. I'm guessing maybe some people are on mobile, out and about. So doesn't appear like we have any questions. Okay, so on the basis that we have no questions, I'd like to just finally thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Of course, I'd like to especially thank Sarah for that excellent presentation. If you want to follow up on anything at all that you've heard today, or in fact anything else, please do contact us. Just to confirm, of course, that the recording of this webinar will be sent out to you as soon as possible. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great afternoon and evening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.